Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world who are here sharing their expertise and wisdom so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi Schalk, co-founder of HLH Growth Solutions, where we help businesses scale using outside-the-box visibility and automation strategies. If you're new to the podcast, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you here with us today, and you're in for a real treat. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest today, Gary Acevedo with Rise Leadership. So welcome, Gary, to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. So Gary, can you share with us a little bit about yourself, about Rise Leadership and your role within it?
Yeah, you betcha. When I was a young man, I was very blessed that my first mentor was generations ahead of his time. It's fascinating that when I lived in that community for like 3 years, and then I went around the country and I dived into like 30 different transformational or empowerment disciplines, NLP, hypnosis, Gestalt, all kinds of stuff, Native American. And it's fascinating to me that I've never found anything that is as powerful as the breakthrough process that he gave me when, he was my first mentor. That's over 40 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I feel very blessed in that way. And, the other experience that really changed it was the best experience of my career. I was in an intensive with some of the world's greatest therapists. The therapist I was working with had worked with John Lennon. And in the middle of that experience, I had this most profound revelation. This lady was having a hard time talking about what she thought was her big hang-up. Like it was being overly critical, and she felt like she'd ruined the lives of her children. And while I was watching her, I suddenly had this revelation that what she thought was her biggest hang-up, in reality, was a hidden great gift, strength, and talent. And so I suddenly saw that everything people criticize themselves for, whether it's being overweight or depression, anxiety, being in overwhelm, juggling too many balls and, too busy, that kind of thing. Whatever people criticize themselves for is actually a myth. So when I wrote the book, I put in there, what is the great gift behind each of these different things? And I wanted to make sure they understood. So in that moment, I felt like I wanted to stand on a mountaintop and shout to the whole world, guess what? There's nothing wrong with us. We are perfect, right? After that experience, because back in those days, this is like probably the late 70s, everything in my field was pretty confrontational, like take responsibility for your life kind of stuff. And I decided, well, if everybody's perfect, I wonder what would happen if I took all the confrontation out of my work and I just focused on what's right with them. And so today, when I do my retreat, which I call the Awakening, and many of my best success stories have gone through that retreat. And because we focus on everything that's right with people, they have these incredibly profound, life-changing, paradigm-changing moments. Your life can change in an instant. And so, I'll just mention a few of my favorite success stories. Like, this breakthrough process helped Mark Hughes create Herbalife.
Wow.
Which at one point was the fastest growing company in U.S. history.
I remember it, yes.
Yeah. It helped Ron and Joseph bring 12.5 million people out of poverty using microloans. It helped Bert save his company, and today that company is saving hundreds of premature babies' lives every day. It helped Renee, who's so far, like her dream when she came into my work was to create a way to help addictions. And so today she's helped over 15,000 people. And she just got back from speaking to the UN because of her medical innovations.
Wow.
And what I love about this work is that because it's experiential and so safe, subconsciously safe, it ignites people's emotional and spiritual gifts. So one of my students, Sonia, she just had her first $1 million year because at the retreat her gifts ignited. And so
Wow.
she started teaching what she learned in her gifts and had her first $1 million year. So I love that everybody has potential. And the worst you can say about most people is that they're very clever at getting in their own way.
We tend to do that, don't we?
Yeah. Well, if you're a human being, that's what we do, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll ask people, okay, how many of you are human beings? Raise your hands. And some people don't raise their hands. And so I'll say, I knew there was some aliens in here, you know.
Well, now with so much AI out there, you never know, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I just love what I do, and I love the fact that since everybody has enormous potential, way more than they can even imagine, I love watching people suddenly get over the fact that they've got these doubts and fears and bad habits that get in their way, and then watch them blossom and
Yeah.
really, show up and shine and be the gift that they came to be.
Yeah.
That's
I
what I
love
love
everything that you said. I'm like all fired up now and lit up. And I love your
about it.
perspective on, everything that's right with somebody. You get to open their eyes to what's right with them versus what's wrong with them. Because we always see these self-help things in these programs and these books, and we're like trying to fix us, right? We're trying to fix ourselves and trying to fix what's wrong with us. And I don't know about men. I'll speak for women, especially moms, because I'm both a woman and a mom. And I am not dealing with, because I love them. I don't deal with them. I live with them and I love them, and two teenagers, right? So one's a girl, my daughter, one's a boy, my son. And for those moms out there, I don't know if you're like me, but with me and my daughter, we butt a lot. And I feel like I'm always riding her. I'm always on top of where my son, I'm not as much because he either gets it done or I don't have to ask him 75 times to do something. But I also think it's the mini me in each other. I don't know if men have this
Yeah.
with their sons and more moms have this with their daughters, but that's what I see in my household. And I always feel like, oh my gosh, like I ride them too much. I'm always on top of them. I always feel like I'm trying to like get them to do things versus celebrating what they've already accomplished. So I'm working more on that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Way to
but
go.
like you said, there's pieces of that that's a gift, right? Not something that's wrong with
Yes.
me. There's a gift. But I'm curious, you talked about and your mentor, I'm assuming, is Steve Gold.
No,
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 you were influenced by him.
he was a therapist that I had my revelation with, but
Ah,
my original mentor was Mel Wasserman in Sea Foundation.
wow.
Yeah,
So you've been influenced by Steve Gold and leaned into John Lennon's idea that people are perfect, which I think is beautiful. So you also emphasize that the greatest key to manifesting a vision is a higher purpose. So
yeah,
how do you help people clarify that purpose in a practical way, not just philosophically, but in how they run their
I got it.
businesses or
Yeah, I got it. I want to respond to what you said because you brought up something. Most people don't realize that the backdrop of their experience is maybe if I fix this, I'll be okay. When they do my work, especially the retreat, they end up having a huge paradigm shift where they realize that this bubble of reality that I've created out of my doubts and fears is a myth. Suddenly the paradigm changes from, oh my goodness, I'm already okay. So now, how good can I stand it?
mm,
Right? And I'm glad you brought up parenting because, like, research shows that in order to make any relationship work, you have to have 5 positives to every negative. any relationship. But in marriage and with children, it's 7 positives to 1 negative. So
Oh,
every time you say, I need you to go clean your room, that's a negative. So now you need 7 positives,
okay.
right? Now, because I learned this pretty early, like I was able to do that with my sons. And so when my son, my oldest son, became a teenager, he was what you would call a parent's nightmare. Like him and his hip hop buddies would literally go out, beat up drug dealers, and steal their money. I mean,
Ooh,
you talk about keeping your angels busy, right?
yeah.
So it took every skill I have to get him back on track, but he did get back on track. So he just got accepted to all 7 PhD programs, got a full ride, and Johns Hopkins University asked him to be a speaker.
Wow. That's so
So he's
awesome.
doing
So good.
marvelous. So my point is that any parent can transform the way they operate with their children and really get those children to do great things. And both my sons have done the retreat twice, and my younger son, it ignited his spiritual gifts. And I don't want to say too much about that, but it's amazing to watch that people can just ignite their potential. Now, the thing about Dream Maker's higher purpose, the retreat is like an evening in 5 days, and then it's about a month later, an evening in 4 days. It happens in 2 phases. And on the very last day of both phases, I do this. It's called the Dream Maker's process. And it's about the fact that the greatest key to manifest your vision is higher purpose. So it takes me a whole day because it's an art and a science. Like, how do I put my daily tasks inside of a context of my highest dream and vision and put that in a context of a higher purpose and then the highest purpose? And the metaphor I like to use is that until you have a purpose that is bigger than, quote, my life, you're like on the edge of a river and you keep adding out over the same problems in your love life, in your money. You know, if people are in their mid to late 30s, they should begin to recognize, oh my goodness, this is a pattern. You know, you think you're getting a different romantic partner and you're really not. And you think your ups and downs in money are somehow new and better and different, but they're not, right? And so as you start to have a context, as Werner Erhard would say, that is bigger than my life, you then move out from the edge of the river. You start to make real forward movement. Now, the center of the river is the clearest and the fastest and the deepest. And what you're doing as you adopt that higher purpose is you basically are now aligning with universal forces. So instead of busting your butt to make things happen, now people and resources begin to come to you because your vision is now aligned with universal forces. So, you know, it takes me a whole day. I can't go into too much about that, but I just want you to know that, you know, once people begin to really apply this, you know, and like even when I teach salespeople, like I've taught 200 salespeople at a time, and I asked them, who knows when a sale occurs? And none of them could tell me. They took good guesses. And a sale actually occurs the very instant that your potential client has a direct experience of the value. It's not up here, it's not logical, it's an experience. So, you know, when I teach sales teams and like that, one of the exercises I do is I say, okay, now sell your partner on your thing. I give them like 45 seconds. Good. Now I have them fill out a 3x5 card. And Above the 3x5 card is their dream. Like I have them do several 3x5 cards. One is for money, one is for love life, one is for anything else that they want. And so the dream is in a sentence above the line. I have them draw a line through the middle. And then below the line is their words for a world that works for everyone. Like mine is heaven on earth. But there's a lot of different ways to say it. And I say, you got to come up with your phrase, a world where everyone wins, a world where everyone knows unconditional love, whatever. It's got to include everybody. And then I have them role play and saying, okay, you've just spent 45 seconds trying to sell each other on your thing. Now, I want this person to sell your partner as if your dream depends on it. You enroll them and you get your dream. And then when they're done, I ask the listener, what did you notice different about their facial expression, their tone of voice, their posture, their presence? And of course, everybody's like, oh, way better. Then I say, now, I want you to imagine that if you enroll your partner, God will make the world exactly like you want it. And then they enroll their partner. And again, I ask the listener, what do you notice? How different? And everybody agrees. My goodness, like I wasn't even interested in what they were trying to sell me. And now I want to do it. So, I always tell people in my organization, if you're going to have a conversation with anybody who can forward your movement and you're not looking at your 3x5 card first, you're losing money. Bottom line.
So what are the greatest key, because we've also talked about the greatest keys to influence. So what is that? And how can leaders apply it immediately with their teams?
Oh, it's my favorite. So the greatest key to influence is to recognize and to speak to someone's highest nobility. So, like when I do this part, usually the first night of every course, I have a volunteer come up to the front of the room, and I have this room full of strangers call out what they see as this person's greatest gifts, strengths, and talents, what they see that they could be, do, or have. Because the truth is, in your lifetime, what you can be or do or have will greatly depend on your ability to influence. This room of strangers is calling out this person's greatest gifts, strengths, and talents. And everyone in the audience is kind of shocked that they can see so much. And of course, the person who's the volunteer, oftentimes they write me an email a couple or 5 years later and say, that was one of the greatest moments in my life, right? And then they get in small groups and they all do it for each other. And while they do that, I come around and I give them my version. And let's just say I had an extraordinary experience one time. And because of that extraordinary experience, I can see the next 4 or 5 years of somebody's life. And I can also see what they look like as their highest, most magnificent, truest self. And so I give them what I call a higher self reading, so they understand that they're a lot bigger than they can imagine. Yeah. And when I can see the next 4 or 5 years of somebody's life, I learned early on that I can't tell them what I see 4 or 5 years down the road. I found out early that if I do that, it scares them subconsciously and then they sabotage it. So these days, I just kind of give them what the next year or what they could focus on that would get them in the right direction where they want to go.
Yeah, I can see how that would kind of make them nervous or maybe too much for them to take in. Is that what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I have what I call percentage clients where, I don't know, a couple of decades ago, I was working with a millionaire who was making about $1 million a year. And by just helping him plug up the holes in his bucket in his love life, he went from $1 million a year to like 7, 8 million a year.
Wow, that's a
And
big
so,
jump.
Yeah, huge jump. And so I thought, man, instead of charging them my top hourly rate, I should have taken a percentage, right?
Yes.
So I started doing percentage clients, and it was fascinating that I found out that it's easier to blow up people's income than it is to get them to keep the income. Like I remember a client that I took him from a quarter million a year to like 70, 80, sometimes 100,000 a month. And 6 months before he lost it all, I could see it coming. And I kept trying to get him to do a few things differently. And
Mm.
of course, he wasn't able to listen. And so, gone.
Mm. So, what in your experience, you just talked about the keys to influence. So, in your experience, what's the biggest mistake leaders make when trying to influence or motivate their teams?
Well, that one's easy. Criticism.
Because you need those five nice things to do, or the
Yeah.
flip side of it, you need five for every one. So every one criticism, you need five. What's the word I'm looking for, Gary?
Well, my advice for people is don't ever criticize anybody
Mm.
because people forget that when you are talking to anybody, it's a projection. You're
Oh,
always talking to you.
that's
I
true.
mean, it might be true for them, but it's definitely true for you because you're the one that's saying it. So when you criticize anybody, you're the one who's getting diminished. So I have different processes. I teach people to get them to, see the truth is that like I discovered that you can actually accelerate the pace at which somebody is growing. Like if somebody's growing at 25 miles an hour, you can get them to go to 50, which means the blessings you'd say like I'll take them through a visualization and say, okay, if you keep growing and learning in the next 5 years, what blessings might come to you because you keep learning and growing. And then I go, now 10 years. And then I say, okay, what if I could bring the blessings you're going to get in 5 years and give them to you in 2 years? Or in 10 years, bring them to you in 4 years? And would you be interested? Of course, everybody says yes. Well, the only way to do that is to accelerate the pace at which you grow. And it turns out that the greatest key, I mean, I spent 8 years trying to research this, and I found out that the greatest key to slow down how fast you grow is defensiveness,
Mm.
which is ultimately self-criticism. Like when somebody attacks you, if it's not true, you don't get defensive.
Right.
If I say, you really bug me because of your blonde hair, doesn't bother you. But when people get triggered, when somebody starts to attack them, if people get triggered or defensive, it's because there's about 10% of that they're saying that you believe might be true. And so I found out that, 90% of what they're saying looks like an insult, but 10% of it is the only part that might be true. But if you can learn how to own that 10% and say, the part of what you're saying that might be true is, and then own it, the defensiveness goes away, which means you're getting better at less self-criticism.
Love that. Thank you. So you mentioned processes, Gary. What processes do you do with leaders that create the best results?
Well, I have a long-term program that people do because it's long-term consistent support. And in that program that actually came out of my own personal life, whenever something doesn't fit my pictures, or, because there's two theaters in your mind. There's a theater of fear and the theater of play or love, right? And people don't realize that they spend 80, most human beings spend 80 to 95% of their daily life in the theater of fear. They keep, you know, have to wake up and then the coffee machine broke and my boss, they spend all that time looking at a theater of what they don't want. And they don't realize that when they're looking at that theater, they're literally moving toward that theater. And what they do want is 180 degrees in the other direction. So I created a list for those people in my long-term program that like starts with the simplest basic skill, which I call hang up the phone. Like, don't let your consciousness go to the negative. The moment you can tell that you're in a negative thought, like hang up the phone, put that thought in a different room, and then refocus on what you do want, not the don't want. And then it goes through a series of skills like recreation and energy work and different things. And we do a thing called empowerment dialogue, which is kind of, I evolved it out of Gestalt therapy. And when people put two chairs facing each other and talk out loud to themselves, basically it's a way so that people can make the best decision for the rest of their lives. Like they never have to make a bad decision again. And then it keeps going down the list. And the final thing is the breakthrough process that we do at the retreat. And that, if nothing else gets you out of that trigger, that handles everything.
So I'd like to talk about growth a little bit and what you've been in business a while, doing your thing, doing your retreats and your processes and working with people. Can you tell me more, give us some more clarity on who specifically you work with? So if somebody's listening going, I think I might want to do this, who is it that this is right for?
Well, to answer that, I'm going to start by telling you my higher context. My higher context is heaven on earth. And my strategy is to create an army of influencers, leaders, speakers, coaches, parents, grandparents, people who make a difference in other people's lives. And so, I want to make sure that when I'm gone, that a lot of people I've had the honor of influencing are out there really making a real difference in people's lives. And that's what's going to help this planet.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, how are people finding you, or how are you finding your people?
Well, people can find me by going to my website, which is www.riselg.com, or they can email me to gary@riselg.com. And I'll tell you that because I've been in business so long, I've had many ups and downs. I've lost my company a couple of times, had to build over again, right? So thank goodness I'm no longer defensive about my mistakes. Like I'm in the middle of designing something called world-class facilitators and healers because one day in one of my classes, somebody said, because the retreat I do, I call it the awakening, and it's a miracle. I mean, it's literally like being in a room with people like we might look 1,000 years from now, where everybody's glowing and shining and risking and in love with each other. It's just beautiful, right? So they asked me, like, how do you create the awakening? And I started teaching them basically about a page worth of what I do. And I realized, oh my goodness, no one in my organizations knows this. And I got excited that, oh my goodness, I need to create a program so people can get the totality of the wisdom, because that retreat is a miracle, but it's because I've had 40 plus years of making mistakes and learning what worked. Like, for example, when I taught trainers at AT&T, I was teaching them a course called pinnacle of presentations. They wanted me to train their trainers. And it's a great course. It's got like 22 major categories and over 100 different techniques. But I learned early on that the greatest tool that any presenter has at their disposal is called the invisible emotional atmosphere in a room. I call it the space of a room. And the space of a room is synonymous with subconscious safety. So when I teach them how to inject more subconscious safety into a training, people listen better, they lean forward in their chairs, they laugh at their jokes. I mean, one time I did a training for AT&T, and at the end of it, the guy came up to us who paid for it, and he said, "When's the last time you saw corporate training that people didn't bolt for the door the moment it was done?" He says, "It's 45 minutes after we finished and nobody's leaving," because they were so excited to keep sharing with each other the stuff that I had just turned them on to.
That's incredible and so wonderful. So I want to, and I thank you for sharing, transformations that you've had with people you've worked with and the processes that you move people with and about your retreat. And we want to learn more about that. And I'm going to ask you to share again as we get closer to wrapping this up, how people can connect with you. But as far as the visibility goes, I know you're on this podcast, and before we hit record, you shared that you're on other podcasts. What are other ways you're getting visible? Do you have a presence online? Do you do paid advertising? What are some of the ways that you're getting out there? Is it a lot of referral based? Because different leaders, different business owners do different things that seem to work for them. And then some things that they do don't work for them. It didn't get that return. And I know you had shared that you had to restart a number of times. So I would love to know, what are you doing now that's working?
Yeah.
And then after that, we'll dive into what are the challenges that you've had in regrouping a few times in order to be where you are today.
Yeah, thank you. The truth is that in the last couple of years, I spent way too much money on marketing, and only one of the things I tried worked a little bit, which was cold emails, because they had a way of designing cold emails. But out of the 5 things, none of them worked. And they all promised the moon and the stars. You know what I mean? And so what we're trying this year is we're going to do a thing called school, because it's a way to build your community. And of course, I do podcasts now, and I'm also applying for a TEDx talk and, things like that. But, you in my system, word of mouth has always been the best thing. Like, we have these, $500 to $1,500 intro courses, and then we give people these ridiculous offers, so money isn't an issue. Then they come in, they love the workshop, and then they're open to considering one of the more expensive items, like the retreat or the Movement to Mastery program, or something else. That's the thing that's been the best over the years, but I keep trying new things.
Yeah. So what have been some of the challenges that you faced outside of your marketing as far as growth goes, and that you've had, because you've been in business for a long time, doing this for 40 years, and how did you overcome it, Gary?
Well, COVID really hurt a lot of people in my industry. Like, I've seen a lot of local companies go down because of that, because people want to do things more online. And, I've seen a lot of companies do more stuff online, but a lot of the people that we've attracted are people that don't want to just do it online. They want to be in person. So, and that's what we do. And of course, every workshop we have a few people from around the country on Zoom or whatever, but I think the biggest thing that I've done to overcome my personal challenges with the business, I call managing my consciousness. like when I describe how there's 80 to 95% of the average person spends in the negative theater, I'm one of the few people I know who have reversed those numbers. I might spend 5% on a bad day, maybe 10%, but I doubt it, in the negative theater. I don't allow myself any time in the negative theater. And I don't assume that the solution is somehow in my circumstances. It's never in your circumstances. It's always in you. So I've never been without the best coach that I can afford. Never. Like I work with a world-class coach every other week who happens to be one of my breakthrough leaders. Because several of my breakthrough leaders who learn this, how to do this breakthrough process, by the mere fact that they've learned this process, they've become world-class healers. And of course, they all like to do other things too. Some of them like hypnosis, some of them like rapid eye, they do a lot of other stuff, energy work, whatever. But I think when people start to realize that the problem is not in my circumstances, in order to get to higher ground, you've got to look inside, because no matter where you go, there you are. And I'll jokingly say sometimes to people, haven't you ever noticed that every time your life is in the toilet, there's always one person hanging around the scene of the crime?
Yeah.
So what I think the reason why people get such good results out of my work and my retreat is because we can get them to look inside at what their doubts and fears are, and how they avoid, resist, procrastinate, etc. And then once we can reprogram those doubts and fears to a core level, then they have much more access. They become more creative, spontaneous, and innovative.
And take action, which is important, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that's what I've done that's helped me the most, but I think it fits for everybody.
Actually, absolutely, it fits for everybody. So, Gary, if you could wave a magic wand, if I could hand you a magic wand right now and you can wave it over one challenge that you're having and you can go poof and take it away, what would that issue or challenge be and why?
I would say to not limit myself on realizing the size of my vision. Like last night, I was looking at my design of the world-class facilitators program, and I had this flash of how much bigger my vision is than I mean, I've held it that big before, but it was like having a moment of realizing how true that vision is. And so that would be what I would say for myself, is to stay in that place of being unlimited.
Love that. So, if I could bring you back in a year, in the next 12 months, what's next for Rise Leadership? What are your big goals?
Well, every time I do the awakening, the retreat, there'll be a moment when we're on a break, and I'll step out of the room, and I'll literally burst into tears with gratitude that I get to do this. And so my biggest vision is that before I pass, that the awakening is on its way to being in every major city in the world.
That's beautiful. Well, we're going to do our part to help get the message out. So before I ask you to share again how people can connect with you and learn more about the awakening and your other program, we didn't talk about AI at all in automation, and it's something that's here. It's not going anywhere. So I'm curious, with you being in business for 40 years, did you have any challenges with when it first was becoming like, okay, we realize it's here to stay? As far as implementation going, have you implemented any automation and AI into your business? And if you have, how are you using it?
Yeah. I just got done. I mean, I've created a few videos that I have on different social media because they're like kind of 60 seconds of this great something. But I just got done creating a flyer for the relationships course with a reel, and I loved it when I got done with it. I mean, it took me a little while. Like my friend, who's kind of more technical than I am, I'm not technical at all. It took him about 5 minutes to do the same thing, but it took me probably, I don't know, an hour and a half or something. But I love the way it turned out. So I love that, I can do that now. And I'm going to probably use AI to design a flyer for the world-class facilitators and healers program I'm trying to design.
Great. Well, Gary, share with us and everyone again how people can connect with you and learn more about Awakening and everything else you have to
Okay.
offer.
So the website is www.riselg.com. LG stands for Leadership Group. That's the name of the company. And my email is gary@riselg.com.
Perfect. And for those of you watching us on YouTube, Gary and I say hello and thank you for being here with us. If you know of anybody that would benefit from hearing what Gary is up to about Rise Leadership and Awakening and everything that he is doing to support people in the world with their vision and their higher purpose, then please share this interview with them. Feel free to pass this along. We would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you want to hit that subscribe button, you'll be notified when we have more amazing guests like Gary today on the show. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, thank you also. Grateful you're here. And if you know of anybody that would benefit from hearing about Rise Leadership and all that Gary has shared today and learn more about Gary, please share this out. Also, if you're up to leaving a review, we would love it. Preferably 5 stars. That helps the podcast platform share this episode and the podcast with more people. The benefit here is to help other businesses grow. And Gary is taking amazing time out of his busy schedule to be here. And we're super grateful. We'd love to share him and Rise Leadership and his message along with more people. And so any of your support would be highly grateful. We'd be very grateful for that. Gary, before I let you go, is there anything that you'd like to share or say before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'll just say that for everybody who hosts me on a podcast, the gift I give them is to offer you a higher self reading, like I mentioned earlier, and to gift you one of my intro courses, which you can do in person or on Zoom. So I'll send you some, upcoming events. And then if anything appeals to you, let me know because I want to gift it to you.
Thank you. That's very generous of you. And I'm grateful. And I know our listeners are grateful too. So when this episode airs, we're recording right now in April. When this episode airs, we'll make sure to have those links and that available for you. So go to the show notes and check that out. All of the links that Gary has provided as well, if the social media links, website links, his email will also be in the show notes. So Gary, thank you for your generosity. And thank you for your time today. I'm super grateful for you being here. And I loved our conversation. And thank you all for listening or watching us. If you're on YouTube, we're grateful for you being here with us today. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Business Growth Spotlight.